Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, I'm Audley Stevenson, and thank you for tuning in to the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day and joining us as we continue our ongoing goal of helping you live your best audacious life ever. We're on social media, and as always, I encourage you to connect with us to keep that audacious conversation going. We're on Twitter and Instagram under the handle The Audacious Pod, and then you can find us on Facebook under The Audacious Living Podcast and our YouTube channel as well. You can easily subscribe to that and tap the notification bell and stay connected. So there's all kinds of ways to be a part of this audaciousness. Like, follow, subscribe, share, tell a friend, and like I said, let's keep this fabulous conversation going. Now, on this particular episode, I'm happy to be joined by Mitch Gray. You're going to hear all about Mitch Gray in just a moment. And really, this episode is for anyone that's had to go through the hiring and recruitment process, sift through piles of resumes to find the right candidate, or conduct those endless amount of interviews. If you're one of those individuals, I think you're going to really appreciate this episode and what we can offer. And that's where I bring Mitch Gray back into the mix, because Mitch is the author of How to Hire and Keep Great People, your go-to guide for finding great people, designing great culture, and building your dream team. It certainly is a big title that offers a whole lot, and there's no doubt that there's valuable insights that readers can walk away with respects to the hiring process and finding that perfect individual to fit your team. Now, Mitch is the founder of Mitch Gray Media, and he's had a diverse work background over the last 20 years or so. He's been a business owner, a manager, a pastor, not-for-profit founder, a community organizer. And what he's done is he brought all those experiences together and has combined that into his book. So he's definitely been around the human resource field, if you will, and the insights he's been able to pack those all into his book, to really help individuals identify those key elements that you should be looking for during the hiring process, how to develop your dream team to go to that next level. And then also, he spent some time talking about how compassion comes into play when building your team. Like I said before, there are a lot of great lessons to be learned. And so without any further ado, here's my conversation with Mitch Gray. Enjoy. So, I really don't have, I intentionally don't prepare any long introduction, Mitch. I mean,
that's cool.
I would say if you want to know about yourself, you probably know better where to start than me, but I just, again, I just wanted to have a dialogue, conversation. So first off, thank you for making time to be here on the Audacious Living Podcast. Appreciate it.
I love it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I always talk about just really having heart-to-heart conversations about the phenomenal things that are happening in our world. It's funny. So much of what I talk about is framed out this thing about audaciousness, right? And but when you really break that down, it's really coming. It really comes to who we are as individuals. And I'm going to use a word that I've heard you touch on and heard you speak to, and you probably connect with that human side of who we are as individuals.
Yes.
And I'll get you to sort of talk about your background a bit, but certainly, everything that I've seen, what I've read about you, learned about you, that element or aspect has been the constant. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's safe to say it's almost like that's your platform or springboard as a starting point. Is that a fair kind of starting point?
That is 100% accurate, my man. 100% accurate. We all have one thing in common, and that's our humanity. And that's kind of something. I told you before we started recording, I have a background in ministry, and since I was 10 years old, all I wanted to do was be a pastor. That I was be a pastor and a basketball player, and I was able to do both, and
Nice.
But that was just at such a young age. I just had this this pulling, kind of calling, kind of tugging at my soul strings idea that I wanted to spend my life inspiring people. And it wasn't, sure, I come from a conservative Christian background, a very what I call American Christian background. So it was very, we have an agenda, we've got to save everyone.
Right.
And I got stuck in that a little bit, but even within that, I was kind of always more about, I just want to inspire people to live their best and to get through tragedy and to find the beauty in life. And so even at a young age, man, I saw this identification of humanity within each of us. And I grew up in this really small town in the southern part of the US. And so I saw the racism, and as a white guy, I saw usually the acts of racism toward others, unfortunately. Right. And even within that, and my family always had this compassion. My grandparents were always serving people. They were always, even at 70 years old, they were the ones driving other old people to the hospital, right? It was like they thought they were the young ones, and they really were, even at 70. And so I just kind of always had this within me to go, okay, there's something that we're missing. And the more I've grown and the more experience I've had, it's like, if we can just get down to the humanity of all of these issues, and just see things through the lens of one human to another, one eyes of compassion to another. So anyway, you're 100% right. And in my leadership stuff, and really in everything I do, it's like, okay, hold on, back up a little bit.
Yep.
You're a human, no matter how much money you have in the bank, no matter what your culture is, no matter where you're from or where you're not from. You're a human, I'm a human. Let's start there.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part of it. But the problem is so many people fear their humanity.
Interesting.
And so when you fear your humanity, in other words, when you fear not being perfect, when you fear not being the right size or skin color or from the right culture or background, when you fear that, then all of a sudden it becomes an issue to sit with your humanity. So then all of a sudden it becomes a real issue to have a conversation about your humanity.
Yeah.
But to me, those are the fun conversations.
Well, they are. Mitch, they absolutely are, because the dynamicism that's created by your uniquenesses and my uniquenesses, and from a problem solving standpoint, or from even just a connection standpoint, I think those are what create the opportunities. Look, I don't want to sit down with someone that sounds and looks like me and has the same experience as me. Fine. Like, first of all, I'm not sure who's gonna get a word in. Right? That's the first point. But the second part about that is really, where's the learning and growth and development from that? It's just non-existent. And so I agree with you bang on. As human beings on this planet, I think we're made and born to connect with one another. Right? Fundamentally, we're not here by ourselves, as much as we want to think that we are at times. Our ego may have another viewpoint on it, but I need you as much as you need me. And I think and to your point, that's a starting point. If the foundational piece is we're all the same and we've got to go in the same direction, that changes the landscape. It really, really does.
Totally.
And I would say, the bulk of the issues and the problems and what's going on in the larger world and larger society wouldn't be as big or pervasive as they are.
But I think because they fear going within themselves so much, that all of a sudden then it's like, okay, well, if you remove all the noise and just get to the humanity of it, I think a lot of people go, well, what am I going to do in life? All of a sudden that means all these issues that we're making up, political and cultural, all this stuff that we're creating that by nature doesn't necessarily exist.
Yes.
Now all of a sudden half the people, they find their identity in that. I mean, look at how many politicians are in the world. If you strip away the noise, they don't have a job.
That's right. That's kind of it. That's right.
And so then it's like, okay, so then what do we do? And so I think we found our identity in so much drama that we move ourselves away from that humanity and that vulnerability. Because isn't that really what being human is
Well, it
being
is.
vulnerable?
It absolutely
It's
is.
being vulnerable. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
absolutely is. I find it interesting, and I want to talk about your transition out of the church into the, I guess, the world at large, if you will. The humanist piece, obviously, in any sort of church environment, that's there, right? That's sort of the focus more than anything else. Obviously, the religion component, but in terms of that connecting with individuals, moving from that to changing your landscape. You transition. We talk about transferable skills, right? That transferred with you. Can we sort of talk about that transition?
Yeah. So, gosh, let me go back a little bit. Let's go back to 2004.
Okay.
I got fired from my favorite job that in my mind I've kind of ever had, only because it was related to that 10-year-old boy's dream. And that was, I was pastoring a church. We were growing. It was a small church, but we had pretty much doubled in size. We were making a difference. We were feeding the hungry. We were helping the homeless. I mean, it was just kind of my ideal world, right?
Yep.
And I got burned out, man. I was giving too much and receiving too little, which is my own fault. That's a personal issue. Anytime someone goes through that, that led me to really, I've probably dealt with it my whole life and we didn't identify it, but it led me to discover I was really battling depression.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first time in my life, through some coaching and counseling, I was able to put a finger on some of these feelings I would have, some of these phases I would go through. So I went to the church. I asked them for some time off. They said yes. 3 days later, they called me back in and they fired me for no real reason. And what's crazy is I had kind of already started this journey. That denomination I was in at the time goes back generations in my family. Generations. It's what I went to school for. I mean, it was just like any other religious culture. Those are like the sanctity of your family, right? It's like the kind of stake in the ground. And I was already kind of going, okay, some of the things I'm seeing don't quite make sense. And years before that, I'd fallen in love with business. I'd always been in love with leadership. I'd always been in love with developing people. So in 2004, when I was forced to begin this journey of kind of reconciling and questioning and, really looking in the mirror and going, okay, if I'm not going to go down that path in life, what else am I going to do? Because that was the only thing I wanted to do. And that was a 10-year journey, man. It was a 10-year journey to all of a sudden start connecting the dots and going, hold on a second, this message that I've held so dearly, when you reshape, reframe, and repackage, is the human message. And the human message is we all need community. We all want to be loved and we all want to have purpose. And when you can apply that to every single life, I told someone the other day, I'm like, there's a reason that hospitals have a program with newborn infants, that if that infant doesn't have a family, they have volunteers from the community that come in and they hold the babies and they talk to the babies, because science shows us that when a baby has that, their propensity for development skyrockets. Why? You said it earlier. We have to have community. In our own way, we have to have community. And so, 6 or 7 years ago, when I started thinking about leadership and the workplace and coaching, I'm like, how does that apply? Well, it 100% applies.
It does.
Because your workplace is a community, whether you call it that or not. People give the majority of their waking hours to the workplace.
That's correct.
So we better change the landscape of the workplace. And then I started digging deeper and I'm like, ooh, leaders are having a really hard problem figuring this out because they've never been taught. Because for most people, the conversation in leadership never goes to, hey, how are you building community?
Right.
Are you really putting the right people on the right seat in the bus? Like, in other words, are you really aligning them with their passion and with their idealism and their thoughts? Forget what's on their resume. Learn about their humanity and what that looks like. So then it made sense to me. All of a sudden it clicked and I'm like, yeah, this is the same stuff I've been teaching, just in a different, reshape, reframe, and repackage. And people are relating to it, man. I think because when you tap into that human side.
Yes, absolutely.
And when you go, hey, leader, you're not alone. You don't have to be the hierarchy of the whole system. Hey, janitor, your value is just as valuable as anyone else's. Then they go, oh, really? Oh, now I have some reason to show up every day.
Yeah, yeah. The job that are on our leaders today. I mean, I'm not even taking into account sort of the world of the workplace now and how it's changing
Yeah.
because of the pandemic, but even just in general, with so much
Yes.
focus on the bottom line, certainly retention, productivity. You can go on and on and on about the workplace issues in general that you've got to deal and manage. These are kinds of things that can fall by the wayside.
Yes.
So when we talk about the hiring and the retention component, it almost comes as no surprise, Mitch, right? That
Right. Oh, totally.
it's not a shock when you see all the things that they're all, because that if you've got to devote all your time to all these things, well, look, just get someone in here and fill a seat because I got to go, right? So I get it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's like the result of doing things the right way has now become the solution to doing things the wrong way.
Yep.
So we're like, okay, profit, margin, bottom line, production, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the way you're going to get there at maximum capacity
right
is to build a strong community, to build strong people. But we've forgotten the human side of it. Like we've been talking about, we've forgotten that.
Right.
And we've made, profit, margin, bottom line, and capacity. We've made that the solution to everything that's going to take you down the wrong path. And so there's no wonder leaders have high stress.
Yep.
There's no wonder the turnstile out the door and in the door of hiring people. There's no wonder that all that's happening because we've taken what is the result of doing things the right way, and now we've made it the focal point, and that's totally backwards. And so, but again, we're dealing with vulnerability and humanity.
Yep.
And so when you talk to leaders about this idea of put your people first,
yes,
and the results will follow.
Yep.
Because now we're in a generation, when when you came up, we were taught the human side of leadership.
Sure.
And I feel like we're through a generation now that it's so much about scale. It's so much about efficiency. And everything's automated now. We're literally removing humans from the production side.
That's correct.
When you do that, you lose connection. And I'm not saying that we get, technology is going to have its place.
Sure.
What I'm saying is people will always be the lifeblood of everything. And when you remove the lifeblood, the body dies. No matter how awesome you make the body, if you remove the lifeblood, it doesn't sustain.
Nope, you got it. So you then come along with an answer to the question, right? You've written a book, How to Hire. I'm gonna get this because it's a big title. How to hire and keep great people. Your go-to guide for finding great people, designing great culture, and building your dream team. Big title. It says a lot. How did you land on that as this is it? How did you get there?
So about 4 years ago, I thought, man, people need to learn how to hire because they don't know how.
So did you have an experience or something, or what was it?
Yeah. 20 years ago, I did a really bad job of hiring people, right? So at 21 years old, I was in a break. I just gotten out of seminary. The seminary I went to was, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 2 years. It was a 2-year degree, 4-year degree in 2. I got to the end of that and I'm like, okay, I need a break. Well, I had worked a retail job in high school and I loved it. So I'm like, I'm going to go do that for a little while. I had 2 kids. I was needing to support my family. Went and worked with a company. 6 months later, they put me in charge of a multi-million-dollar store. So at 21 years old, I'm running a multi-million-dollar store and they did a great job training, but there's just some stuff that's really, you don't think about teaching. And especially when you move up that quickly. My first year, I went through over 110. I ran a team of 12 to 15 people. Mm-hmm. That first year, I went through 110 employees in 1 year because my solution to finding great people was just you hire. Boy, did I learn a lot. And so this book is kind of a reflection of all of my experiences and kind of learning the wrong way, looking at other leaders. And really, again, what I teach is the spiritual human aspect of alignment, of not just worrying about what's on someone's resume, but actually learning the art of interviewing, learning how to ask the right questions, and learning how to recruit. To me, hiring is such a proactive activity, but we've made it such a passive activity. Yeah. And I'm going to go back to technology. I'm grateful that we have third-party apps that can help people find jobs. But if I'm running a business, I want to hand select as many of those people as I can.
Yeah.
I want me and my high performers and my best customers to hand select because an algorithm can't teach culture.
Right.
An algorithm doesn't understand humanity. I do. But so many leaders have lost that. And I've had so many people tell me, Mitch, I can't find good people. I'm like, I can go out in 10 minutes and find you great people. In 10 minutes, from ordering coffee, going to the bank, and going to the grocery store, I can find you great people. And they're like, well, I never thought about doing it that way. I mean, this is like 15 leaders a week are telling me this. This isn't just a few.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, because you're not making time for it. And if you don't make time for it, then you're not going to get a return on your investment because you're investing nothing. And so it's really just I came to the conclusion that the only way for people to ensure and mitigate risk of hiring is to teach them how to recruit, how to interview, and how to align.
Gotcha.
Forget the resume.
Yeah.
Get people in the right seat. And if you get people in the right seat, you can teach computer programs and you can teach whatever else.
Yeah. No, it's so I totally agree with you because those are all teachable things, right? And ultimately
100%.
You want the individual that is teachable, not that said they learned something, right? Because those are two different things entirely.
Yes.
So when we talk about finding great people, what does that? I'll tell you sort of my initial thought. Again, as someone who's kind of gone through some of those processes, right? So I've gone through those processes where I had to hire and I didn't get it right all the time either. But then there are some instances where like, well, I got this bang on, and I started to analyze those instances where I got it right, and a lot of times, Mitch, it was what my gut said. It's how I felt about that individual. My intuition said there's something about this individual that's right, and it had nothing to do with what they studied or where they went to school or what they said they had done. So I wonder if the whole aspect of our gut and our intuition, where does that come into play for you?
Yeah, it's always in play. The problem is teaching that in a book or in a seminar is because where does intuition come from? It comes from practice. You take an athlete who's at the top of their game and they just tell you the game slows down, it happens for me, I know what to do. Well, how do you know what to do? Because I've been doing it for 10 years. Because it's rep after rep after rep. It's free throw shot after free throw shot. It's blocking, it's whatever it is. And it's the same in every aspect. There's a reason that things come second nature, and intuition is the same. The more you put it into practice, the better it's going to get. And so it's hard to teach someone that on the front side.
Right.
I can't tell you how many business leaders I've talked to who are hiring people and they've never interviewed. They're either depending on a website or an application or someone else. So they're in this position of running a business and they've never actually interviewed. I was working with someone a couple of years ago and she runs multiple kind of family business situation. They have multiple businesses, fairly large businesses. She was running all these employees and had never interviewed anyone. And it's like, well, who's doing your hiring? Who's doing your interviewing? And so my thought is, if you're a leader and you don't know the art of interviewing and you've never practiced to come to that intuition, how are you then going to expect others to do the same? Because they've never been taught.
Yep.
And so, yes, I think intuition, after you have that pattern of failing, succeeding, you can identify things that, this person has this personality. This person was able to do this. One thing I always love personally, I hired a lot of ex-college athletes.
Okay.
And 9.9 times out of 10, they were amazing employees because they had to be
foundation
thinkers. They had to be hard. They had to have hard work, good work ethic. Yep. They were coachable. Yes. You don't play in college or professionally and not be coachable. It doesn't work.
That's right.
And so that's a trait that I was like, ooh, that's interesting. And so that led me down another trail of recruiting. I wanted to recruit those type of people.
Gotcha.
I loved recruiting other business owners. I loved recruiting other managers because I knew they had, for the most part, they had those traits. And so I think intuition has two sides. It's a gut reaction. It's that I call that energy.
Okay. Yep.
So when you and I meet virtually or face to face, and we have a simpatico, we have an energy. I can see that. I mean, we can all feel it. We just don't always address it.
Right.
You have that. That's kind of that intuition telling you, chase this a little bit further, or shut the door on this as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Because there's those people, right?
Yeah.
So that's the one side to intuition. I think the other side to intuition is a learned skill of awareness. And you just know, again, through that I go back to athletics and sports.
Yep.
A professional football player knows something. Tom Brady for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers knows because he's been around for 20 years.
That's right.
And he knows what that first year player doesn't know, not because he's necessarily better. He's not the most gifted, but he's seen it.
He's seen it.
And so that's the other side of intuition, is it is a learned skill. And so really to propose that in the book, it's like, okay, well, what does that really look like?
Right. Yep.
You know, we can only perceive things from our current situation. Correct. And if our current knowledge is that we don't deal with intuition, then intuition doesn't really matter at that point. So
Good point.
But I think it does. I think it does have everything to do with it. I think that also ties back into the human existence.
Well, it's funny you say that, because the piece I wanted to bring it back to our initial conversation around compassion, because in my viewpoint, if you're demonstrating those skills, those compassionate skills, the listening, those are the same things that you can put into the hiring process that you can do upfront, right? Because when you bring people on board and you're exhibiting that I want to develop you, or you're able to be coachable. I can listen to you. I can relate to all these sorts of things. They can be done up front in the hiring process. So I think that, again, it's going back to the need for us to exercise that compassionate muscle.
They better be upfront, or you're going to get it wrong every time. You know, and it is learning the art of asking questions, and that's really a door to compassion, right? It's hey, you know, tell me a time that you really struggled with being coached.
Right.
That to me is a great question, because I want to hear when they've struggled with it. I don't want to know all the good stuff. I want to hear someone say, yeah, there was a time in my life where someone was trying to instruct me and I rejected it, and then I fell on my face. Oh, so what'd you learn from that? Well, I learned that I better listen to coach. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So that is that art of compassion, that art of listening. I tell people all the time, when you're in the interview process, you should be asking far more questions than you're making statements. And we've all been in interview situations, being interviewed, where the person interviewing us spends more time giving us statements than asking questions. And so that skill, but that is that compassionate side. You know, the other thing I like to tell people is, you better be open and upfront about your culture in an interview process early on. That's another way to be compassionate. You want to tell that person, look, here's what we're about. And if you don't think it's right for you, let's figure that out now. We're okay.
Hey, listen, people who can self-screen themselves, I have a lot of respect for that, right? People who will screen themselves out of a process because they've identified themselves that this culture doesn't work for them.
Not going to work. And it doesn't mean you have a negative culture.
No, it just doesn't work for me.
It just doesn't work. It's not a fit. And that's what I go back to, alignment, you know, and when we go back to humanity, the most human thing you can do is align someone with where they need to be. And that may not be with you.
Right.
And that is 100% okay. Don't feel, but when you find yourself hiring from a place of desperation, it's really hard to be compassionate and human, because you're just trying to find bodies.
That's right.
So, you know, if you find yourself hiring from a place of desperation, you were headed there long ago, and you're not in a good place. So my advice is stop hiring and let's figure this out to get the right people on board.
Well, and you hear so many companies, you know, they tell you, the desired workplace, or they get recognized for being the place that they have that culture where people want to be. They do some of the things that we're just talking about, particularly around the culture. So what's the starting point then when we say, okay, so let's figure out what our culture is, because part of it is the people that are already there. So for example, if you're your company and you've woken up and said, we need to figure out our culture. Well, you got to start with what you have in front of you, as opposed to pulling something out of the sky and saying, here's what we now are. But once you get that going, what does that look like, that process?
Here's the $64 million question. Why do you exist? And your response can't have anything to do with your product. It can't have anything to do with your product. Answer the question, why do we exist?
Wow.
And if you can't give a clear answer that is unrelated to your product, you have a problem.
Right.
And that's where you begin. That's where you begin. Once you respond to that question, then you can dig deeper. Why do we exist? How long have we existed for this purpose? What does this really mean? What are we doing to take action on why we exist? Again, unrelated to your product. If your product was totally, it was a ghost, it didn't exist, you have to answer those questions.
Yep.
And responding to those, then it's like, okay, let's say I'm running a business that's been around for a while and we've got 200 employees.
Yep.
Your leadership has to begin with those questions. And then the question becomes, okay, we know our purpose, we know why we're here, we know what we're doing, we know why we want to do it. How do we pull our team into this? How does their purpose in life align with our overall purpose? How does their life belief system align with the work they do every day? Because again, employees are spending the majority of their waking hours.
That's right.
Building your dream, not their own. They're building yours.
That's right.
And the more you can tie those together, you're going to have better efficiency. You're going to have better performance. You're going to have better job satisfaction. And now we bring the product back into the picture, whatever that is. Yeah. And your team is going to now perform at higher levels than you ever thought possible.
Yeah.
But it begins with the why. Why do you exist? What good are you doing in the world? Who are you really serving? Are you serving the board of directors? Are you serving your clients, customers? Are you serving yourself? Identify all that.
Yeah.
And then just start working back from there.
Yeah. And it's so funny because that answers a lot of questions and solves a lot of problems. So even within the context that we're talking about hiring, well, if you know your why and that why aligns with me, you could potentially attract, right? And so all of a sudden, so we talk about attraction, you're bringing in these people, right? So that's where it comes from, attracting great people.
So let's go really crazy here, right?
Okay.
Let's go really deep. And I don't go there in the book because again, in the book, it's hard to define. I'm going to go there in the next book though.
Okay.
There is a universal principle that says whatever is in your mind, whatever is within you is going to manifest outside of you. And so if all you have is confusion within you, or if all you have is we're only about the product within you, and you have a cold approach to people, you're going to attract the people that can survive the cold approach. You're going to attract the people that just show up every day and do a job and don't really care.
Right.
But if you live from a human standpoint, from a culture, from a strengths-based culture standpoint, an inclusive culture, if you live for a higher purpose than just your product, and we're talking the existence of a company, now all of a sudden you're going to begin attracting other people without any doing of your own.
Yeah.
You're going to find yourself attracting people that align with what the momentum and motion you take part in is either going to repel great people or bring in great people. And I have a theory in life, and that theory is positive, affirmed, confident people are the best. They're the most aware of any people in existence on earth. They can smell negativity from a mile.
Yes, they can.
And so if you want to attract great people, then you have to deal with those foundational issues. There's a reason that, when places like Google put napping stations or they serve lunch, there's a reason they attract curious people because it's like, wow, that's different, you know? And so, that law of attraction, that universal existence, call it whatever you want. The bottom line is there's an energy force there that says when I focus my attention on growth and positivity and hopeful situations, I'm going to attract people into my life that bring the same with them. And that does not change because you're at your office. Yeah, it does not change. It's the same no matter where you are.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is now that employees are being more selective about where they want to work. Right.
Totally. And I'm so grateful for that, brother. I'm so grateful for that. Yeah.
It holds companies accountable, right? Like at the end of the day. And that's why when you're hearing organizations saying we're having trouble finding people, well, there's a reason.
Yeah. And the reason is you better look in the mirror and you better take a hard inventory of that reflection, because here's the thing. I had someone tell me the other day, and you hear it everywhere. They're calling this the Great Resignation, the era of the Great Resignation is what I see people calling it. And for quite a few months now, I've been calling it the golden age of hiring.
Yes.
Because people aren't settling. They're looking for a new place to work. They're looking for a new opportunity. They're looking for alignment. And there was like some piece of data I saw the other day that like 70% of the people resigning are moms. Wow. And they don't plan on going back to work. Well, the reason they don't plan on going back to work is because they found a higher purpose. But I guarantee you the majority of those would want to take part in something that helped fulfill that higher purpose. So it's not like they just want to not work.
No.
It's that they wanted to align with their higher purpose. And so, then it becomes the burden of a company. It becomes a burden of a business owner to go, okay, am I going to realign? Am I going to serve a higher purpose here? Am I going to serve a higher existence for our culture? Or am I going to just settle and complain? Mm-hmm. Because I'm still calling it the golden age of hiring. I'm telling you, there are some amazing people that are ready to make a shift, to make a change. Yep. Or, you know how many amazing people I've met that just got laid off because of the pandemic?
Yep.
And they're just kind of floating around. They're either being told they're too overqualified or want too much money. And it's like, wow, this is the time to find people, man. It is.
It is. And it's just really interesting. I think the pandemic did a lot. For some people, they realize where, when we talk about alignment, what they should be aligned with. Others realize, well, this is what I want to be focused on instead of what I thought was important. I thought it was, building my career and contributing to this company and giving my all. But there's a whole other aspect now that I was forced to realize that I like a whole lot better. And so we're seeing that. And then there's the emphasis on balance and that work-life balance, because we're now seeing a shift because of what we've experienced over the last year or so.
Yeah. And what's crazy about balance is it's really a myth, right? Like balance is this mythical unicorn. And what I mean by that is you got to make money. I mean, it's the world we live in.
Sure.
But you also want to enjoy your life. But when we view it from, well, I have to balance it, really the idea of balance is the scales, that I have to have equitable value on both sides of the scale. And so what I invite people to consider is don't look at life as being balanced. So look at life as being a whole, non-compartmentalized. So what that means is you have to step into work that fulfills a purpose.
Yes.
That you don't feel like you're wasting, because balance kind of alludes to the idea that you feel like you're wasting your time on one side.
I'm giving this up because I'm on the other side, I'm getting what I want. And
exactly.
That's something different.
It doesn't ever work. And so really it's this idea of the work that I do 8 to 10 hours a day, 6 hours a day, whatever, it better be fulfilling some type of purpose. If I love accounting and I'm passionate about accounting, then don't go fry hamburgers at the fast food joint. That's not where you need to be. And so that can be a real influencing impact from a leadership standpoint. And one thing I love to teach leaders is you should constantly be communicating with your people with questions like, how are you feeling about your work? Is it fulfilling you? Is there something you could bring to the table more than what we're asking you to do? Have we equipped you to be successful? Is there something we're missing?
Yep.
Is there something we could do better? Is there another idea? Do you see yourself in another position? So think about this. For a leader that was being that proactive before the pandemic,
yes,
they wouldn't have seen as massive of a shift during the pandemic.
That's right.
Because proactively, they were again leading from their humanity, leading with connection and community. Someone now, the accountant that really has an itch to be a marketing person and only does accounting because their dad was an accountant. So they went to school for accounting. And by the way, that's a lot of people, right? I mean, a ton of people they fit into that category, whatever their study was.
That's right.
And so now all of a sudden, because business leader was going to that person every single week and checking in, now all of a sudden the pandemic happens and accountant guy has the audacity and the courage to say, hey, I really want to step into marketing. I think that fits me better.
Right.
And those are if organizations would have more of those conversations, I believe it would expedite growth. I believe it would incredibly impact their culture. And actually they would be constantly active in aligning people at where they're better fit.
Yes.
And not worrying about, well, I went to Rutgers for, to become a lawyer or whatever. It's crazy. The data is 78% of people that graduate college with a degree don't go into that field of study.
Look at that. Wow.
That's universal. That's just not in America. That's across the world.
Yep.
And it's like, so then what are we paying attention to? The person,
right,
or the paper?
mm-hmm.
The person or the paper, and that needs to be a constant thing of awareness.
Yeah. Well, hey, we say we have to get the papers. I have to get the papers now. What? Right. That's oftentimes what it is.
And then we don't even use it. And it's like
that's exactly it. It's a paperweight sometimes, or whatever. When it's not, it's not what it's supposed to be. But going back to the example of that accountant that wants to be a marketer. I mean, even to know that the environment allows them to be able to freely say, hey, this doesn't work, or so that's a point for the culture, but also give a point to the power of engagement, because that engagement allows it to say it's okay, as opposed to, well, I may not be allowed to look over there because I got this job to do. Because if that culture allows us to freewheel and figure out what works for me, what doesn't, they can do that openly. Leaders now, okay, fine. I'll just find someone else great to put in that role to fill in for the account, like that. So that's what creates that process, that cycle. And I think that's a fantastic situation to be in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the bottom line is you can always find people to replace someone.
Right.
If you know what you're doing, you can find the right people. Yeah. If you know what you're doing, find the right people. And so,
right.
If you talk about someone that's really active in recruiting, they have a team that's active in recruiting, you're constantly building a Rolodex of people that you can recruit. I mean, I don't have a team right now, but I'm always, in my notes app on my phone, I'm always keeping notes of people that I meet. And on average, I find 3 to 5 people a day that I would go back and recruit. And I'm keeping notes because as I grow, I'm going to go back to that barista at Starbucks that treated me well. Right. I'm going to go back. And so when leaders are doing that, they now no longer fear moving someone or losing someone. That's no longer a fear. And so the reason the conversations we're talking about don't happen very often is because in that leader's mind, they're like, well, shoot, if I move this person to marketing, I don't have an accountant.
That's right.
And the paper is so influential that they're like, well, I got to find someone that's certified in accounting. When the bottom line is you can pay for someone to be certified in accounting.
That's right.
You don't have to find, you just need to find someone who's good and enjoys accounting. That's more important than someone that's already certified, because for $1,500, I can go get someone certified in accounting. That's not a problem. Right. And if I can do that and then have a great accountant who doesn't make errors and loves their job, that's worth the money. But when you don't have that Rolodex built up, when you don't have that network built up, then you fear making those decisions. And so then, there's so many leaders that don't even want to talk about the idea of alignment.
Doesn't fit.
Because they naturally know they don't have alignment. They don't know what to do with alignment. And if they do align things, they may have to hire more people. And they don't have a network built up to bring in great people. So alignment to many people says, oh my gosh, I got to put out ads. I got to put something on Indeed. I got to go to Glassdoor. I got to go recruit, because they haven't been actively involved in that. And so I get it. It's almost like a shock, right? I get it. That's why some of these conversations are hard, because some people just aren't, you can only deal with someone at the place that they're currently at.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, if you're currently at, I don't know what to do, then that's difficult, Yeah.
And you won't know what to do until you have that conversation.
Until you know. Yeah.
The other part of the Rolodex of having that network on hand, if you will, another part of that is even other leaders who and people that they've come across in their travels, because I've been in conversations where it's like, hey, I'm thinking about what the next great whatever might be. Who do you know within your travels? Who do you
100%.
And that's another great one. So either you're and these are of your colleagues that you trust and know, and those are key things that have to be in place first. But once that's out of the way, obviously, it's tapping other people's network is really the point. So,
man, if you told me today, let's just dream for a second. Okay, I'm going to put this out. Maybe it'll come through.
Okay.
Say I got a massive consultation contract.
Okay.
$3 million contract today.
Yep.
And I all of a sudden had to hire 20 people to make this thing roll. I had 2 weeks. I knew I had to hire 20 people. The first thing I would do is go through my personal Rolodex. The second thing I would do is probably call, my closest 15, 20 people that I know and trust.
Yep.
The third thing I would do is get active personally and, just get out and be like, okay, I got to shake the bushes a little bit. I got to make some stuff happen. The last thing I would do is put a job description on any ad platform. That would be the last choice I would make. Because again, hiring is about mitigating risk. And the best way to mitigate risk is to identify those prospects through myself or through people I trust. I've got 25 years of professional experience. You know how many people I can call on to see if they know anybody?
Yep.
Hundreds.
Yep.
And I guarantee you within 2 weeks, I could hire 20 people, get them in the right positions without ever, maybe one or two of them, but very few, if ever, having to touch base on, depend on something or someone else. And the problem is so many people go reverse. If you were to put that same scenario on most business leaders, their first response would be a sign on the door that we're hiring.
That's right.
Or throwing ads at algorithms and websites.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much risk you've just introduced into this whole situation.
Yeah.
And I'm all about mitigating risk. I want to mitigate the risk.
Well, risk and time too. You've now, because you've now created, you've opened up a way where you're flooded with hundreds of wrong candidates that don't fit, but you've got to go through them nonetheless, right? And I certainly don't mean that to be disparaging, but certainly from a time standpoint, right? So if you've got 2 weeks, the last thing you want to do is look at 400 resumes of people that don't fit what you want to do, right? It's just
and most of them don't fit. And the other problem with that is, since you didn't recruit them or someone didn't recruit them, now you're going to have to start the interview process from point A. Whereas the great thing of having a network of people and being able to hire 20 people that quickly from a trusted circle is, if I call you and go, look, man, I need 10 people. You know anybody? You've already interviewed those people for me.
Of course.
Because you know them, and I know I can jump the gun on that, and it'll be perfect. The odds of those fitting, they go so high versus me having to just run a crapshoot and take a risk and a gamble. And so, you're exactly right. I mean, just from an energy output, from an efficiency output, it just doesn't. It doesn't make sense. And I think people would agree. I really believe, again, I have hope in humanity. I believe that 95% of leaders would agree that the scenario that's happening now doesn't work. And the scenario we just painted would work, but they don't know how. They've never been given permission. You know how many managers working for large companies have never been given permission to take an hour a week to go recruit?
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
But if you took 30 minutes a day from every shift and went to the bank and went to the grocery store and went to the, whatever, and you recruited, you would have zero problem finding people. They haven't been given permission to network. And so when they're not given permission, most people don't have, going to your show, they don't have the audacity to make that decision themselves. And not that that's wrong, but it's holding them back from really finding success.
You got it. Mitch, I want to touch on the last part in the title of your book, building your dream team. I wonder if you can sort of speak to why that was important for you to have that aspect or element in the book.
If you ask any leader, sports coach, entrepreneur, solopreneur, business leader, they're going to tell you they want a dream team. And most of the time, they would be able to sit and make a list of what those all-stars look like. They would, but they just never taken the time to do it. And they've never taken the time to learn or be taught how to build that team. Again, I want to go back to sports. I'm a sports fanatic. It's very difficult and you see it with a lot of sports franchises. Rich guy spends a lot of money to buy a team, but has no idea how to run a team. And it doesn't work. Another person, maybe third or fourth generation owner, they've seen it, they've been through it, they've learned it, they know how to do it. And so they build success. Or even better, rich person buys a team and hires the right people person and lets them do their job. They don't get in the way.
That's right.
They don't, they don't put their fingers in the mix. They own it, and then they hire the right people. But I believe everyone, business leader that's successful right now or unsuccessful, could sit and make a list of their all-star team. And so that little tag at the end to build your dream team was almost a tag of hope that it's possible for you to have your dream team. You don't have to continue struggling with finding great people. You don't have to continue struggling with this turnstile of people coming and going. And you can be a great leader and have zero stress. Well,
right.
Not zero, right? But little negative stress. And, so many people are in leadership positions because of the money. Yeah. And they're so stressed out that it's incredible. And it's like, what currency are you willing to exchange for your stress? Because if you want some good stress in life and you want to enjoy your work, then it's time to build your dream team. And guess what? That's 100% possible.
Yeah, absolutely is. And I think if you go in with that mindset from the hiring component of this is what we're working towards. So it's not even to say that I'm hiring this person to fill this hole that I have, right? I'm hiring this person to be a part of my team to further us as an organization. Two totally different mindsets. Totally different mindsets.
I love to phrase that as what I call hiring detachment.
Okay.
You're hiring the person, not the position.
Got you.
And when you can detach the person from the position, so forget what position you need right now, just hire great people, because great people are coachable, they're teachable, and they're hard workers. And so, yes, I mean, we're excluding, there are some positions, lawyers, doctors, et cetera. That's a different story. I'm talking just the majority of jobs in the world right now. Don't worry about the position, because 90% of that stuff you can teach.
Yeah.
Detach yourself from that and just hire great people. When you find someone awesome, hire them. I used to work for a company years ago that said, we always have room for awesome people.
I love it.
And that's a great hiring philosophy. When I meet someone awesome, I'm either going to recruit them or convert them to become a recruiter for me. So I'm always looking out for those people and always have room for awesome people, because when you do, the position works itself out.
I love it. Man, Mitch, this has been such a great chat. I really enjoyed it. One last thing I want to ask you about, and I feel there's been sort of a theme throughout, but we're going to be very specific with respects to, we talk about hiring great people leads to the success of a company. That's just right. That's just the bottom line. In fact, we could have started our conversation with that statement and stopped. Like, we really could have, because that really is the bottom line to all this. I wonder if you could sort of speak to that.
That's right.
As our last point here.
Yeah, I mean, if you hire a great team, you can't stop success.
Right.
You're going to have to work really hard to destroy this, because again, people that are on fire with a purpose, with a passion, with an idea, it's impossible to stop them. Now, they're probably going to leave you if you try and stop their success.
Right.
But and that's why we talked about the solution, the result, the problem, et cetera, and how we've kind of twisted it to where the product and scaling and margin, that's all become kind of our target. But really, for me, the target, the middle bullseye, is surrounding myself with the greatest people I possibly can. If I do that, guess what's going to follow? Great revenue, great profit, great margin, great customer satisfaction. You can't stop it.
Right.
It's going to happen. But you can think you're the greatest leader in the world. Yep. But if you're not surrounded by even greater people, and I think that's a vulnerability that so many leaders don't want to sit with, and that is, you better be finding people that are better than you.
Yeah.
Because that's how you're going to fulfill your maximum potential, is to find people that are better than you.
Yeah.
And so, like you said earlier, I don't want a bunch of me's.
Right.
I don't want 20 of you. I don't want 20 of one other person. I want a mix and a balance and an inclusion of different personalities, different passions, different skill sets. And I want people that are just better than me. And when you do that, all that other stuff you're worried about, it works itself out.
I heard someone actually very recently sort of talk about the conversation was about recruitment in general. And one of the pieces of advice that was being put out was, you have as someone seeking a job or looking for a job or looking for a place to work, you're the one that should be interviewing your potential manager, whether or not you want to be there.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And if you're that manager or you're that individual that grows people, that allows them to develop, we talk about bringing the right people and they're looking for success. Sometimes that success isn't within your company. Maybe they needed to get something from your organization and move on. On the other side of my world, I'm an executive with a professional basketball league. So we've got a lot of pro players that have aspirations of playing professional basketball that come through our league. Well, when they leave us, and there's other places they can go, that's a great thing for our league.
Yes.
Because in some instances, we provided a springboard, we provided that initial platform. And from my perspective, as long as the NBA exists, which is considered the top league, then you always have something to shoot for, right? So as much as, we want to keep you, we want to have you play for us, and, there's still more room to grow. And so I take pride in the fact knowing that you started here, but you ended up over there and you're doing great things. And that's really, what we have to bear in mind when we're talking about this hiring and recruitment and our company success.
So that's that foundation of humanity, right? So we're dealing with people as humans first, employees, team players, et cetera, second.
Yeah.
And so the idea of great leadership is actually the idea of incubation. Really what I'm doing is I'm helping people just incubate, learn, train, grow. I heard someone say a few weeks ago that all great leaders should have the mission to convert every single person on their team to become entrepreneurs.
Oh, man.
That's a win-win, because a lot of people are going to become entrepreneurs, but a lot of people are not. But I would rather have a team of people with an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yes.
Than I would a team of robots who are just following a task list. Because with robots, you don't get idealism, you don't get passion, you also don't get frustration and anger and all that, but you want all that because that's a human experience.
And you don't get challenged to be better either.
No, that's right. And so, really the idea of great leadership is becoming an incubator of great people who are going to move on. I was talking to someone a few days, actually this came up twice this week, the idea of non-compete clauses. And, I get it somewhat, but on the other side of a non-compete clause is the lack of incubation. Because we're instead of putting in an environment of empowerment, we're putting in an environment of imprisonment that says, well, once you leave us, you can't do A, B, and C. And it's like, no, you should actually be, once you leave us, we hope you do A, B, and C.
That's right.
And that makes your company better. It makes your team better. It makes you better as a leader. And so don't fear. For the listeners, don't fear the idea of incubating someone else's greatness, because that is one of the greatest human acts you can take part in.
I love it. Man, Mitch, just like I said, this has been great. I really appreciate you being here. It was a fabulous chat. So for our listeners, if you let them know where they can certainly learn more about you, your podcast, your book, your speaking, you got a bunch of things on your plate, but certainly let them know where we can send them.
Yeah. So first of all, the book is available anywhere you buy books. Mitch Gray, look up my name, Gray, or How to Hire and Keep Great People. My website is mitchgraymedia.com. You can also find me Instagram, Twitter @mgraymedia, LinkedIn, just search me. And we are taking on new clients now, and I'm setting up speaking engagements. So I would love to come work with your team, even if it's just a speaking engagement. Let's do it. Yeah, let's shift the idea of leadership, right? Absolutely. And let's create a powerful place for people to grow. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a fabulous point to end on. Creating powerful workplaces and the growth of our people. It's the most humanist thing to do, right? So
that's right. That's what we're about, man. That's what we're about.
Awesome. Well, Mitch, thanks for being here. Appreciate it, man, and all the best.
Thanks, brother. Yes, you too.
Back we are here on the Audacious Living Podcast, and big shout out and thanks goes to Mitch for joining here. Your insights were practical and straightforward, and I really appreciate you for hanging out with us here. When I reflect on my conversation with Mitch, he left us with so many great things. But if there's just one thing that I take away from our conversation, it would be this. Having a great team made up of quality individuals continues to be a key success factor in any business, and it all starts with the hiring process. Leaders and hiring managers need to ensure that they're bringing in the right people with the right skills who are in alignment with the direction of the overall organization. To figure out if there's alignment, you're going to have to look past the credentials on the piece of paper and recognize the humanity that exists within the individual that they're considering hiring. If there's alignment on both sides, you're on your way to building a super powerful dream team. Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the Audacious Living podcast, please know you can do so by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com. All you've got to do is enter in your email address and you will be immediately notified every time there's brand new content that comes out. So it's quick, easy, and it definitely keeps you in the loop. As we're about to close out the end of another edition of the Audacious Living podcast, I want to take this opportunity, as always, to thank our tremendous listeners. The ongoing support is fantastic, and I say thank you for being here. Thank you for the motivation, and we certainly will keep going. And again, this tremendous world of Audacious that we live in, we're going to keep spreading that. So again, your ongoing support is super, super appreciated. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.